I'm joined tonight by a few people from our community. Evan, who is our Director of Education, Dr. Evan Parks. Evan, if you want to say a quick hello.
Hi, everyone. So good to see you. Welcome.
And then two of our current fellows, two of our 2025 fellows. Miriam, maybe you could say hi as well.
Hi, nice to see everyone.
And Benny.
Hi, so great that you're all here.
And though she's not on the slide, she's very important, Sari Seton, who is our program coordinator. And if any of you have been working on your application, I'm sure, will have some opportunity to encounter Sari.
Great to see you all.
So here's what we're planning for tonight. We will talk and share a bit about the Bronfman Fellowship, and in particular, what the fellowship year is all about. You'll get a chance not only to hear from me and from Evan from the staff standpoint, but honestly, more importantly, you'll get to hear from two of our fellows about their experiences. We'll talk a little bit about the application and just a few tips as you're working through that. And then we'll have plenty of time for answering your questions. So what is the Bronfman Fellowship? I'll tell you just briefly that I'm an alumna of the fellowship. And when I went on the fellowship in 1997, so a while ago, I sent away for a little brochure about the program. And the thing that really got me, that really made me decide this was the program for me, was there was a sentence in that brochure that said that the conversations go well into the night. And I think that sentence still really encapsulates a lot of what makes this program very special, which is if you're someone that enjoys having deep and rich conversations, asking important questions, going beyond whatever is just asked of you in a classroom setting or something else. If you're the kind of person that really wants to go and have those kinds of relationships and friendships that challenge you, this is a program that's really meant for you. And I personally am so grateful that I got to be part of that and that I still get to be part of that. We really think of this program as a place for Jewish young people who have tremendous potential, not only in the way that they're leading and shaping Jewish life right now, but in what they can do in the future to come together from all different walks of life and really explore, deepen, and build friendships that will last a lifetime. As I'm sharing, I'll just say, our fellows and our alumni are really reflective of a very wide spectrum of Jewish identity. And that's something that we hold dear as a program that values pluralism. We are really seeking to help you build bridges across differences at a time that we know it sort of feels like we're all living in our own little bubbles, whether it's because of political polarization or the Jewish communities fracturing. This is a program that really tries to bring people back together. And the kind of people that are Bronfman Fellows are people who are passionate, are really interested in the things that they are doing, whether it's artistically, whether it's in your extracurricular activities, whether it's in the kinds of things you're reading or thinking about. You are somebody who is interested in applying your talents in a very deep way. And this program is aimed at really helping support you to grow in that. Our alumni, as you can see, really span a wide spectrum of ways that they enact their leadership in the world. And that's by design. This is a program that believes that Jewish leaders can do many different things with their talents, not only in the Jewish community, but beyond, and that is a fertile cross-pollination, so to speak, pollination. So the program, nuts and bolts of the fellowship year, we have our summer seminar, and that takes place initially in North America, and then also includes an experience in Israel over the course of the summer. And Dr. Parks will talk about that in a moment. And then we continue not only through virtual interactions in between those seminars, but with a multi-day retreat in the West Coast of the US in the winter. And then we close the experience of the fellowship year in the spring, along with our Israeli Bronfman Fellows, and you'll hear a little bit more about that too, when they come to the US and we have a chance to be together in a closing retreat. And what I think is most important to note is that the fellowship year is really just the beginning. We have an alumni community of over 1,500 individuals across the US, Canada, and Israel. And we really see this as a long-term opportunity, network, community, hopefully a space for creativity and engagement for the long term. So this fellowship year is a very special experience, but it's just the start. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Parks, and he will share a little bit more about what to expect from the program.
Thank you so much, Becky. I'll just say a word about myself. I was also a Bronfman Fellow almost over 20 years ago now. And like Becky, I was also intrigued and very excited by the late night conversations and by the conversations too with teachers, with wonderful teachers who I felt really took us seriously as fellows, who we learned really deeply and richly with, and teachers, many of whom I've still remained in contact with and who've been mentors to me over many years. My background is in literature. I study modern literature and thought, modern European and Jewish literature and thought. And I taught at Columbia in the core curriculum for many years. I'll say one of the things that I find exciting about the fellowship is just the diversity, both of religious backgrounds, political backgrounds, within the cohort, but also within the faculty and staff team. We really try to bring together a uniquely diverse group, both in terms of how people approach and practice Judaism in their methods for how they teach literature or history, so that people are exposed to many different kinds of exciting and valid modalities of Judaism. And one of the things I think is wonderful, just the sparks that fly and the kind of unforeseen connections that can develop between unlikely forms of Jewish expression. The slide here is about the fellowship summer. I'll say a few words about the different components. We start this is typically, though things are always liable to change, but typically we start at the Pearlstone Retreat Center, which is a beautiful retreat center near Baltimore that has a farm. And it's a time where we really connect as a group, learn about each other as a group. It's a time where we get to know the faculty and the facilitators and to learn deeply with them. There's typically three shiurim, three classes that are taught by the three different faculty members that could be anything about the history of Israeli of the modern state of Israel and the rise of Zionism from the 19th century onward to the history of the idea of Torah and different conceptions of Torah across time. Rabbi Hannah Kapnick-Ashar, who's taught with us many years and taught last year, teaches a class about second chances and finding oneself in the aftermath of mistakes and regrets and how to move forward in dialogue with Jewish texts. So it's a time where we really learn deeply with our faculty. And I'll say, I think it's a combination of really like an overview of Jewish history and culture and a kind of crash course, but also the opportunity to go very deep into certain moments or texts or thinkers. So I feel that there is a kind of balance there. In Maryland, we also have the chance to go to Washington, D.C. And to think about Jews' place in America and what it means to be a Jewish American, how we contribute to the American story. and how we respond to the challenges of the present as Jews. We moved to a week in New York City, which is really a dense time of meeting with rabbis, with with scholars, with different kinds of community leaders, seeing different modes of Jewish life and synagogues in New York. And then we will end in Israel, where there's a chance to, similar to our time in New York, meet with a range of Jewish leaders and understand better the challenges that are facing Israel and the different realities there. And then we have our context seminar where we meet with a group, a kind of sister program of Israeli teens, which I'll talk about in a minute, but is a really wonderful opportunity to connect with Israeli peers. Just say a few of these things. We've already touched on learning for learning's sake. I think the fellowship is really for you if you're someone who's finding yourself reading deeper than what's assigned in class, looking for conversations, looking for dialogue partners. We don't have homework, we don't have grades, we don't have tests or quizzes, and we just love talking about stuff. Bronfman is a time where the session will end and we kind of keep talking about the texts or in small groups and it's ongoing, this conversation. We meet with a range of really, I think, a very diverse range of speakers who represent different perspectives. It's a time for connecting with faculty and mentors who are older in a real way. Yeah, there's arts and culture, which is really an important part too. We're thinking about Jewish cultural expression, and there's a variety of opportunities for artistic expression and learning as well. Bronfman is a space for existential questions. It's for a time for figuring out who we are, what is our relationship to our tradition, what are we meant to do in the world, and how can we best enact our talents? What is my responsibility to others? And I think it's a place where we see these questions about our own identity forming really in dialogue with others and with community, and where we begin to understand ourselves through a rich connection with peers, with friends, with teachers. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, this is just a small sampling of speakers in Israel and North America. We typically have writers, artists, policy experts who can explain some of the complexities of what's happening in the US and in Israel with clarity and answer questions. People who are innovators and entrepreneurs in the Jewish world. So just like the first slide of all of the different kinds of people we want to be Bronfman Fellows, we want to reflect a wide range of Jewish expression in the people we meet with. Yeah, can go to the next slide. We also, I mentioned arts. We typically have guest artists who will share their work with us, who in some way understand themselves to be Jewish artists. And even if you're not an artist, we explore how artistic practice can be fruitful for helping to articulate some of our own questions, some of these big existential questions we're asking. Yes, the meeting with the group of 22 Israeli peers is really just an invaluable chance. Many of you might have been to Israel but to really get to know peers your own age and to hear from them directly about what their life is like, what their concerns are like, to argue, to learn, to develop friendships. These are really incredibly valuable relationships, and it's I think a very rich exchange where they also come to the U.S. and we'll have the opportunity to host them, and they learn about Jews in the U.S. And so often these relationships last a long time too, as people stay connected over many years. We stay connected in the fellowship year. After the Israeli Fellows and American Fellows Connect, there are Zooms where we stay in touch. And I found it, yeah, just very meaningful, those connections. But enough from me. I think that Benny and Miriam can speak even more directly and eloquently about what Bronfman is and what makes it meaningful. And so I'll hand it to them to
Thanks
say
so
a word.
much. Thanks so much, Evan. So we asked Benny and Miriam to, just so you have a sense, especially as you move into asking questions very shortly, to have a sense both of who are they, where are they coming from, just to give you a little sense of the diversity of fellows, and to share, kind of one story from their experience that maybe can give you a different way of understanding what Bronfman might be like if you choose to apply and be part of this process. So I'm gonna open it and let them each share, and maybe Benny, maybe you'll start, and then Miriam can join you.
Yeah, so I'm Benny. I live in Minneapolis. I go to private school, not Jewish, but I come from an Orthodox family. I identify as an Orthodox Jew. So if any of you have questions about just religious life on Bronfman, I'd be happy to answer those. And for my story that encompasses Bronfman, it was hard to think of one because I think there's so many fantastic memories that I have. Um, but I'm really thinking of one that actually was not on the fellowship itself. Recently, there was an article in online on the forward about one of the speakers we had, and my friend knew that I really enjoyed the speaker, so they forwarded it to me on text, and we started texting about the article and our thoughts, and then we just called, and we actually didn't talk so much about the article. We just talked and caught up, and it was a lot of fun. We spoke, I think, for an hour on the phone. Um, and I've had a lot of calls like that after the fellowship where I've just caught up or I've discussed articles or our opinions on the current events. And I think that has really been the thing that I'm most grateful for in the fellowship is the connections that I've been able to make with the kids, really fantastic people. And I'm so grateful to have gotten to know all of them and to have those connections last beyond the summer. And we haven't finished our year yet, but beyond this year is something that I'm really excited for as I move on.
Yeah, just to build on that a little bit, I mean, like Benny said, I don't think any slideshow or even any set of stories can really like do the fellowship justice because um, there's just so many different elements to it. But one sort of story that stood out to me was that on Bronfman, we have a lot of really intense discussions and meet a lot of incredible speakers. And so we have a lot of like processing sessions. And during one of these processing sessions, so another person or student on the fellowship said something that really stuck with me, um, which was that before Bronfman, they really felt that they had like a grasp of the heart of the Jewish community, because I think like a lot of us, they're really involved in the community, especially the Jewish community around them. And that since going on the fellowship, they no longer feel that way at all. And I think that I think is in many ways representative of, I guess, the Bronfman experience, because you're just exposed to so much and get to meet so many amazing people and perspectives that you probably didn't have any idea existed. And I think that is one of the things that's really special. And I think it also ties into this other element that I think fellowship is like really deeply transformative for everyone, and it really like changes everyone, I think, in different ways. And a lot of us probably like don't even realize it yet, or are still seeing how that's unfolding. But I don't think anyone comes back with the same perspective on Judaism or themselves or the world around them. And I think that that's one of like the most beautiful things about the fellowship.
So all of you will shortly have the opportunity to ask some more questions to Benny and Miriam. I am just going to share a few more brief slides, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So if you've got some, feel free to start typing them into the chat, but also we're happy for people to unmute at that point and ask their questions. So one of the things that we also wanted to talk a little bit about is safety as an organization that does include an experience in Israel. We are thankful for the return of the hostages and for the ceasefire that we are hopeful will mean a lot more stability in the region. And at the same time, we have been able to carefully plan each year over the past number of years. And as an organization moving into our 40th year, we've been able to carefully plan our program each year with a real attention to advice that we receive from a range of security advisors, including from the Israeli government, as we make our decisions. And we will continue to invest in that effort to really make sure that it is comfortable for the cohort to travel, to adjust when necessary our itinerary if we are in Israel. And that overall, we've been really thankful that in the past 2 years, we have been able to take the group to Israel, even as we've also had these really robust experiences in North America. And during the COVID years, when we were not able to travel to Israel, we're also thankful that the program has such a depth of experiences that we can offer students that even when we're in those circumstances when we were not able to travel, we still were able to have a profound encounter with Jewish ideas, Jewish community, and also, though not in Israel, with Israel in the sense of engaging with our Israeli peers and doing some really deep learning around Israel. So it is, of course, our intention and our plan to be able to return to Israel for this program as Evan outlined it. And also, we are always happy to answer questions about how we continue to monitor and evolve our security approach. And that also, just to note, is also true in our domestic experiences. We also work with security advisors as a relatively large Jewish group of students moving around in various urban environments in the US as well. So here's the last little bit before we open up for questions, which is just first of all, a reminder that the application deadline is December 2nd. We do encourage you to make sure that you have enough time to work on your own application components, but also very importantly, to make sure that the people that you're asking to submit your reference materials are able to do that. So the application includes several short and slightly longer mini essay questions, as well as a short video for you to submit. Just a reminder, the main thing for that video is to just get a taste of how you think and how you talk. Don't script it, don't edit it, don't get too worked up about it. It's something that hopefully is just a fun added component of the experience. We also ask for students to have an official transcript from school submitted by their school. So again, just taking into account timing and making sure you give your school registrar, enough time to submit. And then we ask for 2 references. It's very important to note that these references are not submitting letters. Instead, they are completing a set of questions on our online application that are essentially short answer questions about you. So we ask that one of those references be from a teacher and someone who really knows you in a more classroom or academic setting. And the second reference can be any adult who can speak to you and your character. That means it can be a teacher, or it can be someone else who's a mentor. So if you want, it can be 2 teachers. But we do ask that at least one of those is a teacher that knows you in an academic setting. And I think, I really mean this after so many years of engaging with this review process. the more that you can provide responses to the application in your own voice, the more that we can get a taste of all the different things that make you tick, the better for our reviewers. We have each application is reviewed by multiple readers. We spend as much time as we can discussing each application, and then those students that are invited to interviews do so in an in-person interview. We have 3 locations for those interviews, and we also have financial support for anyone for whom travel would be a barrier to participation. The interviews take place in California, in New York, and in Chicago. And in your application, just be yourself as much as you feel you can. Try and really give us a sense of who you are and what matters to you, and maybe even share whatever you're submitting for your application with one of your best friends and just say, does this really sound like me? And if they say yes, then press send, because that's really who we're looking for, is who you are. So with that, I'm going to stop the slide sharing and welcome some questions, and hopefully we can cover whatever is of interest to you this evening. Obviously, no requirement to answer questions, to ask questions, but feel free.
Becky, we have a few questions in the chat, starting with Orna, who asks what a typical day looks like.
Great. Typical day. Miriam, do you want to say a little bit about, again, I know that there isn't always a typical day, but some of the things that are highlights in an average day?
Yes, I mean, like you saw in the slideshow, we're in a lot of different places. But the first 2 weeks in Pearlstone, we usually wake up, I don't know, anywhere between like 7 and 8 and have breakfast. And then we would usually have a morning shiur, which is just a teaching, which we do. There's like different, all like Dr. Evan Parks and Rabbi Hannah, they have different curriculum, so we do that. And then we would have lunch, and then in the afternoon we usually have like a guest speaker. And then afterwards we have lots of different programming, and it's really I think it's kind of hard to answer this question because no 2 days really look the same on Bronfman. Even when we're at Pearlstone and we have this format of shiur in the morning and speaker in the afternoon, it really varies. And there's lots of additional sessions that are added in. So yeah, and then in the evening, we have manchim and madrichim. We have 2 manchim and 2 madrichim, which are sort of like counselors, and they'll usually do some sort of programming so that, can be anything from capture the flag to a processing session. And then afterwards we have free time, and usually what happens is we hang out like pretty late, usually, till midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning, just talking. At Pearlstone, we have this space called the Moadone, and that's where we would all hang out. And then as we move to different locations, like from New York, we would have, again, like a shared space where we could always just hang out. And those were also some of the best moments. But yeah, and when we're in New York and Israel, the days are going to look a lot more packed. So there's going to be like a lot more traveling to museums, to visit speakers, to go to restaurants. In Israel, we went to the Shuk. So once the program starts gravitating away from Pearlstone, the days get, more packed.
So I see another question. We'll do our best to get through questions, and hopefully in some cases we might combine a few questions. Another question is just about recent changes made to the program. And there's a few things that have been really significant adjustments that we've made in the past few years. One of which is the artist experience, bringing in working artists for fellows to have a chance to do a workshop and hear their stories of what does it mean to engage with art, not only visual art, but music and other forms of art. I think that's been something that has really enlivened different kinds of expression and conversation. Likewise, really grounding the program in various parts of the US, in addition to having meaningful time in Israel, is something that has been an evolving project for us. Somebody else here asked about the winter seminar, for example. That happens in the Bay Area, and this will be our third year doing that. So up until so basically, for 37 years of the program, we did not have programming on the West Coast. And when we had programming in the US, fellows really encountered just East Coast Judaism. So for any of you who don't live on the East Coast, you know that that's not all of what American Jewish life looks like. We still don't have Midwest Judaism in the mix, or some of the other parts of the US in the program trip, but one day we'll get there maybe. So, moving between spaces and thinking differently about how we use the environment is also part of something that's an evolving piece of the program. In relation to qualities that we see in fellows who thrive most, Benny, I don't know. Do you want to say, what did you see, if anything, that was some consistent qualities that you saw in your peers this year?
I think it's not about necessarily about being able to change your mind or being able to have an open mind. I think that's a phrase that gets thrown a lot. I think that's very important and I think it's great. But there's also some things that I'm not really going to change my mind about necessarily so easily. And what I think really the program, the best quality to have is to just be able to have empathy, even for views that you would never find yourself condoning or being able, like there's some things that speakers or even fellows who have views that are really, really different than mine. And I don't think they're going to change my mind anytime soon, but to be able, we're really good friends. And I have empathy and I really do understand why they think the way they do, even if I'm not going to think that way. So I think just that ability to have empathy for people you disagree with is what's really important to be successful and to thrive and to be able to deal with the vast diversity of experiences and people that you're going to encounter.
It's really beautiful. So another question that's come up here is about the learning. I'm gonna hand this to Evan. I'm gonna throw two questions together. One is about, what does the learning look like between seminars? So for example, when we meet on Zoom or in other in between times, and also, what are some of the topics that are discussed? Or, in addition to the existential questions, are there certain themes or certain topics that get explored in our seminars?
Yes. Primarily, one of the premises on Bronfman is that we can just take out a text and learn. So we don't do, I mentioned we don't have homework. There's not reading assignments between seminars. We do have Zoom sessions where we'll meet and learn with a teacher throughout the year. But mostly the Zoom sessions are about reconnecting with one another and with our Israeli peers. I'll say the learning that happens on the program, maybe it's all united by a deep sense of questioning and trying to figure out who we are, what Judaism is, how we translate this ancient tradition in the modern world. These are really important questions, and they could manifest differently in different seminars. I mentioned one of our faculty members last year, Professor Yitz Landis, who's a professor of Talmud at the Jewish Theological Seminary, taught a shiur about different conceptions of Torah across time, how Jews have come to understand Torah differently throughout different times, and of course, thinking about what it means to us and what it means today in light of all of these traditions. And we're also thinking about a big question, I think, has to do with place and belonging, what it means to be Jews living in America who have some kind of relationship with Israel, what it means to be Jews in America full stop, how we understand our role in this country, what ways we can contribute best to American society. And I think it's the last thing I'll say is we're thinking a lot. I think the word pluralism has somehow not yet come up on the Zoom, but it's an important word. And we're thinking a lot about how, and Benny has mentioned it a few times too, that we're thinking about how people who hold different perspectives and practices can not just tolerate one another, but can learn to be in relationship. And I think that that's a thematic question for our texts and learnings, but it's also a question that we're trying to put into practice as a community. Someone also I saw was asking about davening and religious experiences as well. This is, I think, beautifully tricky in a way, like as we work carefully, very carefully, as a group to try to find experiences that will meet everyone's needs, even when we have such different needs, and to work hard to create something that is fulfilling for many different kinds of fellows. So this theme of pluralism and coming together constructively across differences is also a big theme.
Thank you, Evan. So another question, I'm going to combine two questions, but a little bit more about our Israel experience. So one question here is just about what did the fellows do in Israel? Did you get to explore different pieces of Israel or different parts of Israel? Maybe I'll start with that. And then another question is about in what ways has the program adapted what we do in Israel based on the October 7th attacks and the war. And so I can certainly speak to a little bit of how we've adapted it, but I actually think also Benny and Miriam, you could speak to in what ways did you find that you were able to kind of get your arms around some of what was happening in Israel in light of being there this past summer. So maybe Miriam, do you want to start with anything that you think might be helpful about the Israel experience and the travel and other pieces?
Yes, absolutely. So I had never been to Israel before this trip, and I don't speak Hebrew. And so for me, I think, I was definitely like well educated about Israel, but I think um, what was the most like really amazing experience for me in Israel was getting to spend time with the Ami team, which was touched a bit about on the in the presentation, which are the Israeli fellows. And that is just a really, really amazing experience because you get to spend, I mean, I think it varies year to year, but we spent about a week with the Israeli fellows. And it was just so amazing to get to be in learning with them and to hear their perspectives and also to hear like the diversity and the range within their perspectives. There's like, we were sort of saying like if there's a range on which the American fellows disagree, the Israeli fellows are disagreeing on a much bigger range. And it was just, I think for me, that was just really what I felt gave me the most insight into what it's been like in Israel. And really, it's just really was amazing to, make friends that I'm still in contact with in Israel, which, I never would have thought would have happened like, before the fellowship.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I've been to Israel many times, and I have family in Israel, in very different places in Israeli society. And still, I think meeting the 26 Lemme team was one of the most eye-opening experiences for me of the entire fellowship. Um, the ability to just get a snapshot, and it's not a full snapshot, but to be able to see the lives of 26 kids your age, who are so different from each other and live in such different places of the country was really incredible and eye-opening, and I think was definitely the centerpiece of the Israel portion of the trip.
Yeah. And just to really add to it, I think I think you got a good taste just from Benny and Miriam of the experience in Israel. But it's a very people-centered experience. When we are there, our focus is on what is happening for the people who live in this land. We do meet with Palestinian speakers. We also spend a lot of time with a whole different variety of Israeli individuals and communities in an attempt to really understand all the, again, we're not going to get there, but all of the different pieces of what's driving and shaping this amazing place, and the challenges that are faced, but also the beauty and the resilience. And we really are there to listen and there to offer empathy and care, but that doesn't mean putting our questions aside. It means really listening carefully and asking questions with respect and care. And I think that the fellows, our goal is really for the fellows to have a chance to open up even more their own curiosity and their own personal relationship with Israel and Israelis. And the program is not going to be one and done. You're not going to know everything you need to know about Israel in 10 days. There's just no world where that's possible, or in 10 years. But if you can build some relationships and start to open up these questions, that's really a primary driver for how we're approaching our time in Israel. And on that, I see a few other questions here that I want to make sure we get to. And also, of course, feel free to keep putting in more questions about any other pieces, including around Israel. So another question that came up, and I'm going to combine these two. One is about the prayer experience on Bronfman, and in particular, maybe Benny, you could also refer to what it's like as someone coming from an Orthodox background, what was and wasn't always possible when it comes to daily prayer. And then also what the Shabbat experience is like. So I think it'd be great for both of you to respond to those questions about prayer and Shabbat. But I'll let Benny, you start it off, and then Miriam, you can add to it.
So davening was really different depending on where we were. In Maryland, it was a little bit harder. I'm somebody for whom it's important to pray 3 times a day, preferably in a quorum of 10 Jewish men. And so it was hard. We did not pray with the minyan during the week. But I was really pleasantly surprised. We were woken up at a time that made it, and we had space between. I didn't have to take time out of breakfast or wake up earlier. It was sort of built into the schedule that there was sort of a free time where people could pray if they wanted to, and that was really nice. And also for Mincha and Mariv, there was also a time sort of set out for that. And then in terms of prayer on Shabbat, there was a Shachrit and Mariv and Kabbalat Shabbat that we did as a group, and we sort of discussed as a group how we wanted to do that prayer service. And then Mincha we did not have as a group. We did that alone, if you were interested in that. Um, and then once we got out of Maryland, we had more options on Shabbat. We had the option to people could go to a Reform minyan or a conservative minyan or an Orthodox minyan. Sometimes it was even like a Sephardi minyan. And you could really just choose to go where you felt most comfortable or to challenge yourself if that's what you wanted. And even when we were in New York and in Israel, there was more opportunities also for weekday. Like in Israel, we walked, a group of us walked to weekday minyan in the morning, and there was a lot more opportunities for that if that's something that you cared about. And then in terms of the broader Shabbat experience, um, I guess I'll just speak to the sort of concerns maybe more from a religious point of view. Um, in terms of like how Shabbat worked with lights and with uh, different ways that people practice, we had a discussion as a group about how we wanted to practice Shabbat as a group, and people were receptive to fellows who were more observant in their concerns, and it was really just a group process of deciding how we wanted to do it, and I think that was really a really enlightening and amazing process to just be able to discuss and share what Shabbat means to me and also hear about what Shabbat means to other people and to figure out how to make a Shabbat experience. It was really Shabbat was the best part. It was beautiful to see how we all came together on Shabbat and were able to create a religious experience that was meaningful for everybody. And so, Miriam, if you want to talk more about that.
And Miriam, maybe you could even just say some of what Benny's describing. How familiar, if at all, were you with some of even the words that he just used before you went on Bronfman? And again, it's not necessarily the goal that you become fluent in different terminology around prayer services, et cetera. But I think it's great to be on a call like this where there's so many different families and young people represented, not all of whom might feel that their needs are about prayer, and some of whom will very much feel that there is. So I think, just even kind of where you were coming from and then how you're responding to this answer is also very helpful.
Yeah, so I guess like Becky said, I didn't know what I never heard the word davening and before going on Bronfman, and there was lots of other terminology that I wasn't familiar with. I think a lot of that is because I've grown up in a conservative Jewish household on the West Coast, and so there's just a lot of differences in terms of what words we use, and then also just which words I'm familiar with using in my congregation. And so yeah, as somebody who doesn't daven, or which means pray, I don't pray regularly when I don't keep Shabbat, and I don't, there's a lot of and I don't partake in a lot of the more religious practices. That was definitely something I was worried about going into Bronfman. Just my ability to follow along, and my ability to contribute meaningfully to the conversation. And I think that the first thing is that I think it was our first or second day, we had a processing session where it was really nice because I sort of found a lot of people who were feeling the same way I was on the fellowship. So the first thing I'll say is that you definitely won't be alone if you're in sort of a similar situation. But also, what I'd say is that there really isn't anything to be worried about, because you absolutely do have a lot to contribute, right? And I think in terms of the learning, there's so much you can contribute from just an analytical standpoint, or without a lot of that, without familiarity with the same thing that everyone else has. And that's also why you're here, because you have a unique perspective. And then I think in terms of the Shabbat services and the praying, I was really worried that I wasn't going to be able to follow along, and I ended up actually being fine. And you also do learn a lot of new things as you go. And like Benny said, when we're in Pearlstone, we get to sort of make it everyone sort of contributes to the Shabbat. And so for those Shabbats, I was able to, make my own contributions. And so that was really nice. And then when we're in New York and in Israel, you get to pick where you want to go for Shabbat. And so during those experiences, I was able to, go back to congregations that were similar to mine, but I was also able to go and just try completely new things where I was even more lost. But that was honestly great. And it was just so nice to be able to see different ways of praying, and it was really beautiful. So yeah.
Thank you. So there's two questions that are, really match each other nicely, and they are both essentially asking for Miriam and Benny for you guys to share what was something that was challenging or difficult in your Bronfman experience. And I'm going to throw an extra piece in as well, because another question that came up was just more generally about the complexities politically. I imagine both referring to Israel, but also referring to the United States, and whether or not that's in any way part of some of what is or isn't challenging in this experience. But you can take it wherever you want to go. And yeah, maybe Miriam, maybe you'll start this one off.
Okay. I think that one of the most challenging moments for me was a conversation I had in Israel about the rabbinate, which is a which is sort of like the religious authority in Israel. And I think this conversation was really difficult for me because I think it was one of the times on Bronfman where, like Benny said, I, wasn't able to like change, not that you have to change your mind, but change my mind, or it was really difficult for me to see where they were coming from. But still just in those conversations to be able to have empathy and be able to, take a step back and just really try to understand. And I think that was what was most challenging, was when I'm having like discussions like those, pushing myself to really try to see where the other person is coming from, and really try to understand like their human experience, their lived experience, and just what they're thinking, and that understanding that yeah, sometimes the conversation, you just need to have the conversation for the sake of having, for the sake of learning, and not for the sake of changing either of your experiences, but just to understand. And that's definitely something that you build up throughout the summer, and it definitely is not always easy, but I think it's something that is really important.
Yeah, and I guess for me, similarly, I think the hardest part is, and I'll try and answer these all together, is when you have real people in front of you who disagree with you, and you can't sort of push them aside. You can't sort of just give them the facts and hope that they'll change, and you can't um, devalidate their experiences because their experiences are real. And so that there's no like you can't resort to looking on Twitter for the person who's going to tell you how to think or how to go against what they're telling you. You just have to interact with them face to face, and I think that's one of the most challenging things that we can do. But it's also one of the most rewarding things about the fellowship, and I think it's also how they navigate the complex political situation in Israel and America, is really like the relationships that you build, not just through the deep conversations you have, but also the fun you have together and the games we play and the the conversations we have, not about Jewish life or just about school or about friends. Those are the things that allow us to see each other as people and that allow us to navigate these really tough conversations in a way that is productive and does something more than just yelling across each other's arguments. And I think that that's the most challenging thing because you can't just yell across each other, but it's also the most rewarding thing. And so I think that I hope that answers the question.
Thank you both so much for sharing those answers. I'm gonna start to wrap up our evening together with all of you, and I really just first and foremost want to say thank you to all of you for being interested in this program, for giving an evening, giving perhaps even more time as you're working through the application. One of the reasons that we do this work is because we want to see as many young leaders have opportunities to deepen their Jewish identity and to connect across different parts of the Jewish community. And so our hope is that even this process of both reflecting in your application questions, and then, as Sari noted, participating, I forgot to mention this in the slides, participating in the group workshop experiences, which are virtual sessions where you'll get to actually have a facilitated conversation with other students who've applied to the fellowship, and some of our alumni will help facilitate those, and then receiving from us listings of other Jewish programs that are interested in working with young adults like you, or some of which are fee-for-service programs, some of which are also free or reasonably subsidized. And all of that is because we really hope that this will be a further launching pad for you in some way. Of course, we are looking forward to and hope that many of you will be our fellows this coming year. But either way, we hope it'll be a positive experience, and we are really appreciative that you're interested in growing in this way, in a time when we really need pluralism. We need much more of it. We need many more ties and connections to one another. And where those of you who are learners and are young need spaces where you can really have real conversations, and where you don't feel necessarily confined by one particular ideology or perspective. That's what we're hoping to offer, and we appreciate you taking the time tonight to be with us. So with that, December 2nd, the application deadline. If you run into any challenges, any technical questions, whatever it may be, feel free to be in touch with us. We're really here for you. And again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And thank you to Miriam and Benny and Evan and Sari, and have a good evening.